I'm not sure what problem I would have with wasting money. Maybe you can. I don't think I would. My complaint isn't that people waste money. I mean, people waste money by my definition all the time. They go to sports games. They buy unnecessarily expensive cars, unnecessarily big houses. They waste money all the time. The good news is that it doesn't matter what I think because it's their money. I'm sure that some of the things I spend money on, other people would consider a massive, massive waste of money as well. Do I need another microphone? Yes, I do. So my issue is not with wasting money, and I'm not sure where you would have got that from.
Okay. Your issue is with?
My issue is with using force to steal the money. My issue is with using violence to coercively change the ownership of the money, or using the monopoly of central banking to print money, which of course hits the poor and those on fixed incomes the hardest through inflation. That is my issue. I don't really care what the guy who steals my money does with it. I care that he's stolen it. Whether he wastes it or spends it wisely or anything like that doesn't really matter. So what happens after the money is stolen is not philosophically relevant or morally relevant, if that makes sense.
Okay. In the video, you just seem to be very frustrated with, I think you said something along the lines of physicists should find a real job and go make a product that people can buy and in a free market like engineers. And yes. I was confused with this because it seems to me, the picture I have in my head is that physicists do a lot of research, crunch a lot of numbers that helps chemists research and look for new materials to, create out of stuff. And then the new materials go to the engineers, and engineers use it to create new fascinating things that we can all buy.
I don't doubt that there are some times when government-funded physicists come up with stuff that is useful to engineers in the free market. I mean, I don't think I ever denied that that's not even remotely possible. But the reality is that they're not driven by the market, right? The physicists are not driven by the market. They're not driven by voluntary relationships. So what do people want? Well, they want iPads, iPhones, Android. They want cool stuff that they can use to make their life better. Do they want a Hadron Super Collider? Hell no, they don't, which is why the physicists have to lobby the government to extract money from the helpless and largely ignorant population by force in order to have their cool toys to play with. Now, if people want to smash atoms together and try and figure out the origins of the universe, I think that's cool. Then they can sell tickets to it, or they can take up donations to it like I do. I think philosophy is a little bit more important than physics, but I'm not running to the government with my hat in my hand saying, give me money from people by force. I am asking people for money so that I can do what I argue is good for the world. Now, in a free market, of course, you generally have people who invest in companies because the companies can show that there's a market need. So when I co-founded a company, or when I sold the company, when I got involved in more company sales, you had to say, well, here's the market, here's the competition, and here's why you should give me your money, because it will end up serving somebody's needs where they'll exchange money for the goods or services that we are providing. Mm-hmm. And I think that is fine and honorable and noble and decent and a good and useful thing to do. There are other pursuits where I can't, like if I were to start a philosophy show like this, like Free Domain Radio, I wouldn't be able to go to investors and say, you see, there is a huge demand that people have for philosophy and they're going to pay me 50 cents a podcast, and here's my competition and here's my market research. Because this show is the ultimate expression of what in economics is called Say's law, which is supply creates its own demand. People didn't know they wanted iPads until there were iPads. They didn't know they wanted Walkmans until there were Walkmans. People didn't know how valuable and useful and helpful philosophy could be until this show or shows like it came along. So in the pursuit of trying to service the world's need for philosophy, I have to stimulate the world into recognizing how useful and necessary philosophy is, because most of the world thinks that philosophy is a useless, dead corpse science that only necrophiliacs would bang. I have to show them that it's relevant and important and useful and essential. That's my challenge. Now, if I was off there getting government money to come up with ethical theories and stuff, I wouldn't be facing the marketplace and finding ways to make people interested in what I'm doing. Now, I survive on donations, which is exactly what physicists should be doing if they say, like, either it's bullshit, in which case, fine. Lots of bullshit gets funded in the world. I would consider religion to be one of those major bullshit. Political parties, lots of bullshit gets funded in the world. So if they want to go smash atoms together, fantastic. It's bullshit in a lot of ways, in terms of there's no particular customer need for it, no particular customer desire or demand for it. Great. Then go online and say, hey, we want to do some bullshit. Can you give us some money? Maybe that's what a lot of people think I'm doing. Hey, love to do some bullshit. Can you give me some money for my bullshit? So if they're just whacking around with atoms and fine, great, maybe, it'd be kind of cool to figure out if they could figure out some cool stuff. And maybe there'll be some spillover somewhere else that's of value too. So either it's bullshit with regards to the market. And again, I use the word bullshit here not to mean that it's false. It's just not market driven. So if it's not market driven, then they should be asking for donations. Now, if it is market driven, in other words, if they say, look, we'll be providing this framework for all these engineers to create all this cool stuff, well, fantastic. Then they should be the R&D arm of a company, or they should have their own company. They should get investors and they should get money voluntarily. But they should not be going up and saying, we've got a right to play with atoms at gunpoint. That's bullshit, and it's horrendous. And it is the complete opposite of the scientific method. Does that help at all?
Okay, so yes, it does. You're pointing more specifically to the extortion side, where the money flows rather than the field itself. It came across through the video, or at least it was my perception that it was the field itself of physics that you found useless.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know how to, I can only be as clear as I can be, and I've consistently praised the scientific method and said that the scientific method is one of mankind's greatest achievements, along with the free market and reason and philosophy itself. So, if people want to sort of say, well, he thinks that science is bad, well, that's just, I don't know how to make that clear. It's the coercion that bothers me. What I like about engineers is they're building stuff that people want. It's a basic Misesian or Austrian economics thing. You cannot figure out the value of something outside of the price mechanism. You cannot, like they say, the Large Hadron Collider, I don't know, what is it, 10 billion, 20 billion, who knows? Somebody knows. I don't know how much it costs, right? But they say, well, how much it costs? What's the value of it? Nobody knows. Nobody knows. If you want to know the value of something, put the goddamn thing on eBay. If I want to know the value of philosophy, I put my shows out there and I ask for money. And guess what? I can figure out pretty easily what the value of philosophy is. But put something on eBay and figure out who's willing to pot hard-earned money for it, and then you'll find out the value of something. But going to the government means that you have drained value away from other people by taking their money by force or inflating their money supply into vapor. But you're basically just a bunch of thieves with pocket protectors.
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, on that point, we would certainly agree. So
excellent. All right.
I'm with you on that. I would love the moral relativism, I suppose, was the only other point. But I've been of the opinion that moral relativism, or I'm a relativist naturally in my natural state. But
I'm a what? Hang on a sec. I'm a relativist naturally. I don't know what that means, because you're talking about an intellectual position. Are you saying that you are genetically predetermined to hold the position of moral relativism?
I don't know. I got to that point where I would look at people and everybody seemed to have their own beliefs, and that was like, all right, well, I had argued with people to a significant extent, and after a while I just said, you know what, the hell with it. You have your belief system, I'll stay with mine. But you've been arguing for a more absolute sense, and I've only seen one video on that, and I found it actually kind of fascinating. Where you argued for the opposite of that. Forgive me, I'm not being very specific.
No, I get it. So everybody has a wide variety of belief systems, and I say that most of them are rank self-serving bullshit that is forced down the throats of children, usually at the point of violence or murder threats in the case of religion. And What happens is without philosophy, everyone gets exhausted, and you're either going to go behead people or you're going to throw your hands up in the air. You're going to say, well, I guess we'll just agree to disagree. You go into your corner, I'll go into my corner, and we'll just do our own thing with the people who believe what we believe, and let's balkanize this shit up the wazoo, and we all retreat to our corners, and we claim that moral relativism is the way that things work. So, I mean, if we're going to do the moral relativist thing as a society, fine. Then what we need to do, of course, is we need to start teaching children moral relativism. We need to start teaching children that there's no such thing as right and wrong, that there are no social rules that they have to obey, that whatever they want to do is perfectly fine and cannot be considered right or wrong or good or bad. Want to study for that test? Study for the test. If you don't want to study the test, well, we're not going to fail you because that would be a judgment call. Want to go hit another kid? Sure, go hit another kid. That's no problem. Want to go push another kid into a frozen lake? Yeah, go push another kid into a frozen lake. You want to make up your own spelling? Go for it. There's no such thing as truth and reality and objectivity. Do your own math. Make that shit up. Pretend that a silent Bob is shitting out kanji into a tilt-a-whirl and call it mathematics. That's fine. So my question is, how the hell do we have a society where most adults claim moral relativism and most adults hit children for disobedience to values? You understand, those two things are completely contradictory. If we have moral relativism, let's teach the kids that there's no such thing as good and bad and right and wrong. And let's never hit them because that would be imposing your values on someone else. So how the hell do we have a society where adult to adult is nothing but moral relativism, but adult to child is Stalin-esque totalitarian brutality? And I would argue that those two things are exactly the same. One is a direct cause of the other. Why can adults not reason with each other? Because they were fucking hit as children. Why can adults not find objective resolution to their disputes? Because they were bang, 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 hit as children. Asking kids to reason when they become adults is like asking me to be fluent in Mandarin when I've never been exposed to it. My daughter is fantastic at negotiating, fantastic at reasoning with people, very assertive, very confident, because that's the language we speak at home. So what bothers me, I'm not saying in you, right? But what bothers me as a whole is the unbelievable n-dimensional matrix-style hypocrisy of societies around the world. When they have control over kids, they generally beat and terrify and torment the shit out of them to get them to conform to all the social bullshit masquerading as culture and values in the world. In other words, when human beings have power, then they impose totalitarian will on their children through spanking, through school, through religious indoctrination, through cultural indoctrination, through the death worship of army indoctrination and army worship. When people have power, they impose totalitarian, dictatorial, brutal, quote, values on their kids. But when adults meet other adults who have some sort of independence and some sort of freedom, what happens? Well, I don't want to impose anything on you, right? Well, I guess your beliefs are as valid as mine, so let's just agree to disagree. You go to that corner, I'll go to this corner, right? Well, which is it? Well, what it is bullying and cowardice. People bully kids when they have power over them, and when they meet other adults, suddenly they're as meek as little lambs. Well, we'll just agree to disagree, multicultural, blah, 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 right? Moral relativism. Well, if moral relativism is true, we are abusing our children by hitting them and commanding them to obey certain ethical standards. If moral relativism is true, then the entire court system, the entire judiciary and punishment system is evil. If moral relativism is false, then people who will not impose their values on others, though they are more than willing to beat them into their kids, are goddamn bunch of cowards. I'm not putting you in that category. I'm just telling you the general approach that bothers me.
Okay. That was pretty good. What's the better way?
The better way? You mean the better way of instructing children?
That was sort of originally my question. I'm kind of realized the mishmashiness of moral relativism, and you were speaking more on virtue and sort of the way, the opposite of that, your particular view, universal
behavior. Well, look, I mean,
yes.
People can get into the theory, and I applaud people who get into the theory. It is really important to be skeptical and to examine deeply moral philosophy, because you don't want to be led astray, because morality is the most fundamental engine that runs the social world. But for people who don't want to get into all of the philosophy, well, you just have to accept that we're not really lying to our children. I mean, that's all you have to do to be a moral, quote, philosopher in the world. All you really have to do is say, hey, maybe we're not totally bullshitting our kids. So when my daughter hits another girl, not that she ever has, but if she did, my daughter hits another girl, hits another boy, I say, whoa, that is absolutely unacceptable. We don't hit.